amount of what's called in common parlance a brass to come and ask the representatives of the public in the Congress to give them exemption from the antitrust laws, which will enable them to divide the human beings who possess skill in the basketball divide them around a table just like so many cans of pork and beans. In fact, this proposal is that we leave people who have pork and beans subject to the antitrust laws, but put human beings negotiate for under which a person possessing basketball skill will be compelled to negotiate only with one team.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Milstein, who was our attorney in the antitrust case that was filed in New York, is going to discuss the legislation from a legal aspect. There is no question in my mind that this is so. If you recall, many players prior to the preliminary injunction, these gentlemen have gotten together and have restricted competition entirely. The court order, as Mr. Milstein will describe, says that they must compete up until the time that Congress passes a law granting them the right to merge. There has been no competition. They couldn't wait for the Congress to approve because they were afraid it might take a while. Not one NBA player has been signed by the ABA since May, when this agreement was entered into, even though prior to the time it was entered into, there were all sorts of statements of all-out war. We're going to sign all of the best players. We're going to bring them to their knees. Not one has been signed.
And I don't know whether I guess you're aware of it, but this proposed merger agreement provides that all of the owners must continue to adhere together in their fight to persuade Congress to allow them to eliminate competition by imposing upon themselves a penalty of $3 million if any one of them breaks ranks. In other words, the merger agreement required them to mortgage their ideas as to what is good for their sport and what is good for the economic welfare of America, didn't it?
Yes, sir. In reality, Mr. Chairman, knowing that more than 50% of the owners have held their basketball franchises for less than 2 years, what we now see here is a totally new business in which the entrepreneurs have immediately come to Congress to ask for special privileges, for guarantees against failure due to their own weaknesses, for poor management, for lack of planning, and for greed. Now, naturally, we have not been privy to a municipally owned stadium for the collection of rent, interest, and taxes. I personally were involved in salary negotiations with the gentleman who is the owner of the franchise, who told us that if he had to pay nobody went to those players who had bought homes and who lived in San Diego, how much money. 4 years later, it was sold for a profit, reportedly, of $4 million.
I expect, however, we perhaps better let the witness proceed, and then
No, I've enjoyed this. I didn't realize that basketball was getting to the elevated to the position of labor union exemptions and et cetera. Let me just say that I think what the colloquy has indicated, at least to me, is that we are indeed talking about special interest legislation.
Exactly.
And we are obviously here talking about a group, a very small group of people coming in and saying, protect me from the antitrust laws. At least we have identified that. And for this I'm thankful. This is very special interest legislation. I personally, Senator, could not agree that the social history that went into the entire labor union movement is equal to, in height and elevation, the importance of basketball owners. I don't equate the two. And my own feeling is that I would like to drop the subject simply by saying it is special interest litigation, and let's get on and see what's to do about it.
Well, of course, Mr. Chairman, aren't we all guilty of special interest advocacy?
Always.
Mr. Milstein is guilty of it because he is advocating a certain course of conduct with reference to statutes on the books. We are, those of us who sponsor this bill and who want to see it enacted, feel that as a matter of general policy, it would be well to carve out an exemption here to serve whom? The basketball players only, the management only, the ownerships only? Not at all. As a general proposition overall, including the fans and the public, including the players and the managers. You see, that's where we are. We're all special interests. Some are more special than others, and some are more general than others. But it must be said that the interest that you represent in that lawsuit is confined to the players.
All right, but Senator, let me say this. I'll take the argument on those terms. If then there is to be special interest legislation, which is to benefit everyone.
Yes, sir.
Everyone.
Yes.
This isn't it, is it? Then we would need some kind of legislation to create some sort of superstructure to take all of everybody's interest, take our interest into account. If you're going to pass legislation giving them the merger, which eliminates competition between them, we beg you to pass some piece of legislation that protects us from them once they become monolithic again. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying I'd rather be left alone. But if you're not going to leave us alone, and if there must be special interest of the legislation for basketball, then it really ought to be legislation which is good for everybody. The fans, the owners, the basketball players, and everyone else connected with the sport.
That's what we believe we have. That's what we believe we have in this legislation.
A bill which does nothing but permit these people to eliminate competition among themselves. That's all it does.
That's your interpretation.
Well, Senator,
that's your description.
What else does it do?
And saying so doesn't make it so.
They said so.
That's why we have these hearings.
Senator, they said so. I didn't say so. That's what the preamble to their contract says. That's all they're doing.
They say they are doing certain things, to be sure, but these things are done, and we say these things are done in the general interest and for the general benefit. Now,
well,
you dispute that. We dispute your disputation.
Senator, we have an honest disagreement, but I certainly hope that those who read the bill and read the legislative history and read what the owners have said make it perfectly clear that they have no desire, and I'm sure if Senator Kuechel came back here, he'd be the first one to admit it. All he's doing here is eliminating competition in the acquisition of these players. That's all. Now, that's good for them. I don't deny that. That's very good for them. They're going to get richer as a result of that. All I'm asking you to do is take us into account. What about us? What about the players facing a monolithic organization again? Should there be no consideration given to their rights under these circumstances? I urge you that what you have before you is one-sided legislation. I'm not saying that there should never be any legislation. I wish there weren't. But if there is going to be, make it two-sided and tri-sided. Factor in the interests of everybody involved in basketball. That's really what we're asking for. Now, Senator Hart, I would like to read 70. I believe that it's entirely possible that that orders...
Mr. Chairman, my name is Oscar Robertson. I'm a professional basketball player currently playing for the Milwaukee Bucks last years. I played in every All-Star game during my career. I speak here today on behalf of the players in the National Basketball Association. Our opposition to the proposed merger is total. Every player supports the stand and the positions as indicated by our counsels in prior testimony. The players recognize the unfairness of a system of professional basketball which allows them to negotiate with only one team. They've gone through the experience of no competition prior to the ABA's existence and of great competition since 1967. They understand that every player has been dramatically helped by the competitive aspects of a second leg. All their salaries have increased, from the last man on the team to the superstars. I personally have seen the terrible hardship